In this video, we shall be talking about the const keyword that was introduced in ES6. We shall also look at the differences between const and let. If you haven't watched my previous video on the let keyword, you can find it up here. I will also have it linked in the comments section of this video. My name is Kelvin. I'm a software developer based in Nairobi, Kenya. If you're new here, you can subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. All the links that will be mentioned in this video will be found in the description section of this video. Let us jump right in. The const keyword provides us a way to declare constants in JavaScript. For instance, if I want to declare a constant of pi, I can just type const pi, then initialize it with the value 3.14. Very simple and very straightforward. There are some similarities between const and let. Two of them that come to mind is both of them are block scoped and both of them cannot be redeclared within the same scope. If you want to learn more about the let keyword, you can check out my previous video. I will link it up in the card above or in the comment section of this video. So when it comes to scoping, I can declare a block of code and initialize the same constant. You can see that there's no error. So I can console log the value within the block of code and also outside the block of code. Let me change this to make it pretty clear. There are different values. Just one. I know it's wrong. And we can see that there is no collision because it is block scoped. But notice when I try to redeclare the same variable within the same scope, I immediately get an error. Let's just run this. And I immediately get an error. Pi has already been declared. So the similarity between let and const is both of them are block scoped and also both of them cannot be redeclared within the same scope. One of the major differences between let and const is in terms of initialization. You will notice that when you're working with the let keyword, you can declare a variable without initializing it. I can have a variable called name and leave it that way, and that will work fine. Then later on in the code, I can come and initialize the variable with a value. And you can see that my name Kelvin gets printed on the screen. This is not the case when we are working with the const keyword. So with the const keyword, you have to always initialize the value. Let me try removing the initialized value. And we can see that we are getting a syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration. So this does not work when working with the const keyword. You must initialize the value after creating it. Let us look at mutability and immutability of the const keyword. One of the main differences between let and const is in let we are able to mutate the value that is stored in the variable. For instance, I can create a variable called name, initialize it with the value of Kelvin, then print out the name, and my name gets printed on the screen. Later in the code, I can be able to mutate the value in the variable. So I can say Kelvin is now equal to code. And you can see code gets printed or console logged. That means I'm able to change or mutate the value that is stored in the let variable. That is not the case when you're working with const. With const, once you have initialized the value, you are not allowed to change it or to mutate it. Let us try to change the value of pi. we are getting an error, assignment to constant variable, so type error. That means we are not able to change or mutate the value that has been declared as a const. But I know this is not the case in all scenarios. This only applies when you're working with primitives, things like numbers, strings, booleans, so on and so forth. But when we are working with reference values, it might not be the case. For instance, if I change this constant to profile, which is an object, and I assign values to it, maybe name, you can see that my name gets printed in the console. But I am able to mutate the value. So profile.name, you can see that I'm getting a different value. But there's another trick. If you want to freeze this and you want to make them immutable, you can wrap this object under a neat function called object.freeze. And you can see that after wrapping the object in object.freeze, I am unable to override the value. But in case you want to receive error, you can always switch the code to use strict mode. And once we declare it as strict, you can see that we receive a type error, cannot assign to read-only property name. So that is it. But one interesting thing when working with freeze is it only freezes the first level of the object. For instance, if I have another object within this object, let's call it address, and I have a city of Nairobi, you will notice that we are able to override the values at that level. We can rename it to Mombasa, which is another city in Kenya. Let us console log the value. Oops, let me remove strict mode. You can see that I'm able to override the nested object, but you can also freeze it at this level. And it becomes frozen, you cannot change it. But a neat way to do this is you can write your own function to freeze an object at different level, maybe using recursion or something of the sort. Let us take a look at const and arrays. So I have declared a constant of numbers, which is an array, and I have some values in the array. So when I print out the value, you can see that the array gets printed or console logged on the screen. As a rule of thumb, when working with primitives, you cannot mutate the values, but when you're working with reference values, you can mutate the values or the contents of that constant. So in this case, we know that an array is a reference value. Therefore, we are able to mutate. Let's say I want to add another value in the array. I can just say numbers.push, let's say 10. And we can see that the value 10 has been added to the array. Similarly to the way that we froze objects, we can also freeze an array. That also works when working with arrays. And we can see that the array is not extensible and we get an error. One of the rule of thumb that I tend to use is when working with primitives, I tend to use capital letters to define the const. But when working with reference values, I tend to stick to camel case. If you have found value in this video, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below. All the links mentioned in this video will be available in the description section below. Thank you and see you soon.